Along with individual experts, Surgeon Masters brings you life improvement strategies in 10 minutes. These proven principles and strategies are easy to learn and can be applied immediately, allowing you to practice your best. Here's your host, Jeff Smith.
Welcome, everybody, to the Surgeon Masters mini podcast. I have with me executive coach and consultant, Theresa Hamilton-Casalegno, or as those who know her call her T. Welcome, T.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm really happy to be here today. It's a pleasure to join you, and thanks for the introduction.
Well, and you have so many great thoughts related to the neuroscience of coaching and a lot of just things that cover the whole world of coaching for those professionals that are seeking that great resource. What do you want to talk about today?
I recently completed a Neuroscience of Coaching certification program. So I'm now a certified practitioner of the neuroscience of coaching. And there's just so much there that's hugely valuable to us as coaches. But today I really wanted to kind of specifically talk about something that was particularly noteworthy to me, and I think to our cohort, because it's fairly fundamental around helping us understand why it's important to sort of communicate in a certain way with our clients, and then a little bit about how to do that, kind of giving people the idea about how to approach that. So that's what I wanted to talk about today.
Fantastic. Tell me a little bit more.
The idea is that certain parts of the brain light up at certain times when we sort of hold people in what's called a naturally creative, resourceful, and whole state. In other words, making no assumptions about what they might know or don't know, kind of holding them in a place of autonomy and free will, and they'll rise to the occasion if we give them the chance. So coming into conversations that way with the client, in particular as a coach or as a leader who coaches as part of their leadership, is sort of the state of mind we want to sort of get to with our clients, because they're going to be much more open to learning, actually being able to learn and then sustain change in a way that if we approach them from a position of identifying weaknesses, focusing on what went wrong, that negative side of a conversation that we sometimes think we have to have because it's around accountability, for example. People tend, for the most part, to shut down. And about 10 years ago, Richard Boysantis and Anthony Jack of Case Western University studied brain scans, which clearly demonstrated the impact of the brain when people were treated as though they were naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, as well as with the questions, the type of questions that they were asked while the brain was being studied. For example, not to ask yes/no questions, but rather open-ended questions, and how that causes people to have to pause and think for themselves, not to bring solutions forward and tell people what to do, but to ask them what they think the solutions might be to a particular problem that you might, in fact, have pointed out if you're a leader and trying to lead teams, or a client for that matter. When people are in that space, they are much more optimistic and in a more of a toward state, as opposed to defensive and retreating state of mind.
And so if we have both coaches and clients in our audience, if the client's coming to a coaching session and they see a challenge or a problem, or maybe they've had something pointed out to them in this negative state, give me an example of how you might approach that.
As a coach, let's say for a moment, and the same would be true in a conversation for a leader, to begin with being curious about what's the problem they think needs to be solved, and asking as opposed to assuming and telling. So coming into that conversation as a leader or as a coach with that mindset, and sort of emanating that through the types of questions you might ask, and asking questions versus telling, not solving the problem, or this is what you need to do by X, but rather saying, what do you think happened today when that went sideways? Tell me what your observation was about this and any thoughts you have about how we might correct this. It's a very subtle in a way, but it's also quite different from a very directive tell, not asking point of view.
And this is bringing things to sort of a positive state. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Ideally, being able to focus on people's strengths in conversation and pointing those out and helping them work from a position of strength and what they know their strengths to be and how they could bring those strengths to bear on seeking a promotion, trying to make change in their life, struggling with their boss, any number of issues that our clients and our employees have in the workforce. And in healthcare, you and I both know the conflicts are daily. It's a tough environment and a tough culture for people to coexist in. So coming into conversations from a place of wanting and trying to create trust and a sense of space for the other human being, regardless of what the issue is, I think is the point. The types of questions that would go with that are short and simple, from a place of curiosity, non-judgmental. So, for example, in the category of non-judgmental, what will happen if you do and what will happen if you don't? You tell me. What's going to happen if you take that road or you take another road? Open-ended, you and I both know what that looks like. How does this help you understand what's really important to you? Sort of asking, keeping the focus on the individual. The other thing about this is the coach and the leader, if they're coaching, learns a lot more about where that person is really coming from and what really is going on in their mind about the problem or the issue. And then I think last but not least, asking what we call in coaching and neuroscience disruptive questions, actually creating questions and giving enough space for people to ponder and consider a different way of doing something. So some examples, some categories around that are asking questions to make the person think, ponder, and consider. A simple one, going to the idea of being short and simple, what do you want, really?
Probably adds to that very simple question as well.
Yes, it does. I've used this question sort of with clients who are considering a job promotion and they're struggling with, do they really want it or not? So getting underneath that apparent indecisiveness is what you want to do. And that causes them to have to think about, what is it that's really important to me? And what do I really want? Causing questions to disrupt neural pathways that are not serving that person. So what are you putting up with? What are you tolerating? Questions to activate learning and self-reflection. If you could do it over again, what would you do differently? What lessons are you taking from this? And then questions that help make the neural pathways align with what someone really wants is, who are you committed to becoming as you move forward? So that's another way to keep the conversation and the thinking and the movement in a toward state rather than sort of going back over and ruminating on what isn't working, but really keeping people moving forward. I'm sure this is a question you and I have both asked our clients and the people that work with us on teams is, what is one thing you can do today that will move you forward? Identifying that one step. And again, that's asking, not telling them what they need to do by, Tuesday morning at 8:00 when you show up in their office. It's asking them, what are they going to do? And then committing to it, of course.
And so give us the brief summary of how this brings us, or what the take-home message is about the positive emotional attractor.
I think the take-home message is, this won't surprise you, it's a question. It's a self-reflection question for us as a coach or for leaders who are working with teams and individuals all day long. And that self-reflection question is, how do I want to make people feel when they're around me? Do I want them to feel shut down and defensive, or do I want them to feel open and able to engage in conversation that really is going to take us both in a toward state and not going backwards?
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing such an important message with our listeners.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
There you have it. In less than 10 minutes, this is Jeff Smith, along with Theresa Hamilton-Casalegno. Until the next episode of Life Improvement Strategies for the Surgeon Who Wants More. Ciao.
Now, take 10 minutes and put your plan into action to practice your best.